We're back here on our special program speaking about vision casting in the Bahamas. And we are joined now by Khalil Brathwaite, who is Head of Business Development at Leno, as well as Chief Marketing Officer at Canoe. You have a whole lot of things going on, Mr. Brathwaite. Huh?
Yes, I'm quite busy sometimes.
Yes. You heard these scholars around me talking about this new economy, I call it, that we are in. And we talk about young people fitting in the scheme of things. How do you see it?
I actually agree with a lot of the points that were raised. I think technology and innovation has leveled the playing field and is just disrupting a lot of industries. And with the ability to do things more efficiently, we have to kind of embrace efficiency, which is not a knock against tradition, but understanding the dynamics of how the field is changing. So right now we're seeing a lot of different sectors kind of converging. People are feeling it in certain industries. So for example, fintech is a great example. You know, banks tend to be very traditional, and you would have to go to the bank. Fintech puts the power into the actual consumer's hands, and that is the shift. So the market is now moving closer towards the consumer versus away from the consumer. And as that market moves towards the consumer, elements in that market will transform, and everyone will kind of realign themselves accordingly.
Let's talk about capacity that we have in our country, in our population, to deal with all of these changes that we see in this new environment in which we are in. The extent to which Bahamians are ready for these changes in the global market.
Well, I could speak to that.
Yes?
In the generation before mine, maybe 1 in 10 went to university, and most people went to university away, or went to UB or COB as it was then. Now it's 1 in 4, I think, the statistics, when you include UB as well as people that study abroad. People are very, very exposed here. Every time I go on Facebook, there's some Bahamian that I know that's somewhere in Asia. Well, not because of the virus, but they're in Asia, or they're in Europe, or they're in Africa, so people here have a lot of exposure, and it's just about leveraging that, because everyone has something to add.
The capacity is here. Our sales manager is 20-something. Our marketing manager who works with Khalil is 20-something. My operations manager is a young 30-something. I'm the old person in the room. I'm a 40-something. And there's no shortage of good, qualified, bright persons looking for avenues to show what their talents can bring.
That's interesting.
And to kind of redefine the term, the word ready is very subjective. Like, how do you say ready, right? How do you gauge it? But I can definitely say the Bahamas is primed for opportunity. And we are given the level of talent in terms of different industries, exposure, like this gentleman said. We are a part of the global playing field. We have Bahamians who dabble in crypto. We have Bahamians who are in China right now. We have Bahamians who are in the Olympics, in the NBA. Again, for a country under 1 million people, we are a global presence. And that kind of speaks to our abilities. And this space is no different. We are local in terms of being born and raised, but we're definitely globally ready in terms of the ability to compete and bring the best of the globe's ideas to our local onshore market.
The flip side of that is also this. The information is out there. The best employees, the best workers are those lifelong learners. Those persons that are not going to wait for you to tell them, they're going to go find the answer. I consider myself the smartest person in the world. Not because I have the answer, but because I can call you, or I can call him or him. And the fact that I'm willing to do that makes me smart. And so those persons that you bring in, that's the kind of employee that you all want to work with. And so yeah, I'm encouraged by that.
There's only so much you could learn in books and in school, to be quite honest. A lot of this is very practical, right? Of course, there's technical skill sets that are required, no question about it. But a lot of the learning comes in the doing. A lot of the creation, right, the creativity comes out in the doing, right, in doing the work, right? So it takes hard work. For example, when I first got into the crypto space a few years ago, there weren't any, even if we wanted to do a course, there weren't any courses to be done, right? That weren't gimmicky or just trying to sell you, oh, you're a blockchain expert if you just take my 1 week course, right? Like, you know, but if you wanted to get an accredited like certification or degree in digital assets, you know, those things just came online last year or 18 months ago, right? So I was self-taught. Right, and you know when you and I'm still learning every day, right? And the thing is, there's so many new. When you say it's out there, you have
evolving.
you have online learning, you have podcasts, you have networking, particularly in the crypto space. You have a lot of meetups, right? We actually have a crypto community where we welcome anyone who's interested to participate, right? We have the Bahamas Blockchain Alliance. We have the FinTech Working Group at BFSB for member firms of the Financial Services Board. So there's a lot of ways to learn and develop oneself.
You see this?
And the last point I would make, sorry, is that you actually have to be willing to learn, first of all, but you have to be willing to unlearn and relearn.
You see
Right.
this?
Unlearn and relearn.
Correct.
In this digital era.
This
That's right.
phone here is brought information to everyone. You know, you can pull out your phone and you have all the information, more information than a king would have had 50 years ago. You have in the palm of your hand. So it's what we're leveraging to you know, make the society better.
And to kind of speak on how all of these elements are converging on these elements, you have the access to information, you have groups of like-minded people coming together. Now, how does that trickle down? Well, I was pleasantly surprised when I heard some of the people in that space had facilitated a hackathon for young students. And I think when the winning team was the Rampley Home for Children.
Correct.
Out of all of the teams that entered, right? So
The
you had
hackathon.
it was a hackathon. Yeah, I know it's the word hackathon. Hacking sounds like, but in the computing space, it's just speaking of coding and cracking codes and solving
Right.
puzzles
At
at a particular level. And what they do is they expose young people to this technology, and they make a game of it, and then they make this game available to everyone. And of all the schools, of all the people that won, I'm proud to say that the Rampley Home won. The team from there. So
That's right.
if we keep that in context, that tells you everything you need to understand how prime
And what-
the Bahamas is for
And
this
what that
opportunity.
hackathon and what programs like that do, which is vitally important. It's not learning, it's how to learn.
That's right.
You see, and it's that problem-solving thinking aspects, and that's one of the things if we as a country want to do, focusing on education, giving people the tools, and teaching people how to problem solve and how to learn. That's more important. As I give talks to high school and I give college. So high school tells you that you can follow curriculum. All college tells me is that you have the ability to learn. Graduate school may say you have the ability to learn in this particular discipline. When you come out, you don't know anything. Start learning again, and that's when
That's right.
that's when it really becomes real. And so you have to learn, and that 10,000 hours takes about 2 to 3 years to really hone your craft.
So in terms of our whole theme of new casting or vision casting for our country, are you suggesting, based on what you see in our community in this digital era, almost everyone has a cell phone, that our system of education is working?
Well, I can't comment on the system of education is working. What I can comment on is as different areas in life develop, like the cell phone became your email, became your recording device, became your listening device, everything in that ecosystem needs to evolve too. So by definition, if schooling doesn't evolve, or just even our understanding to access to learning doesn't evolve with the learning environment, by definition, we're going to be displaced. So I'm not putting the charge on the school as saying it's not adequate or adequate, but I am saying that they have to be prepared to move with the times, because as the environment changes, our learning curve has to change.
But see, I asked you earlier on whether we are global ready, and you answered in the affirmative.
Yeah.
Because there has been what we call last week on our program, the deglobalization of the world.
Right.
Are we ready in this whole era of deglobalization?
Well, that's a good thing. Are we ready? That's a really good question. That could be subjective, but I do think the Bahamas is primed. We have been, for example, in the financial services industry, we've been our own pillar. We've been the Cayman Islands, the Bermuda, the Bahamas. We've been in that kind of top 3. In the athletic world, we've been pushing that. Now we have many developments to say Bahamas are global players, no matter how we look at it.
But when we talk about dealing with economic matters, Brian mentioned reinvention. Somebody
Right.
talked about innovation, and we made the point that we have to be innovative.
Yeah, I mean, let me speak to that a little bit. I mean, we, in my other capacity, I've had a chance to be more closely connected in working with the schools and to some extent, Ministry of Education, in terms of the curriculum. There are persons at the top end. They are the drivers, they are the pushers. As someone told me one time, cream rises. Those persons are doing well, and they get pushed and they get helped. The vast majority, however, there is a gap. And that gap needs to be filled with better educational systems that we have. And so and you see it in the schools. And so the curriculum needs to advance with the times, and it has not traditionally or looking back. And so yes, there is a gap that needs to be filled.
Okay.
So that's what Khalil was speaking to. There is a gap, and I do see it.
Yeah, I mean, from the bottom up, you take a push approach. But I mean, I think from the top, the university can really pull up those standards if it really, if it does all of the things that it's really planning to do. Okay, the university has a pivotal and central role to play in the development of Bahamians and getting them ready for the world. And what does that mean? How can they do that? The University of the Bahamas needs to integrate itself into global university systems.
Education is tied to
exchange
industry.
programs, and the like.
Well, I think, Mr.
And
Jones,
this is what the university is
but
doing.
I think you're still talking, because you said you went straight to university.
Yeah, of course.
It's who we sending to university is the issue. And I think that the curriculum is geared a little bit towards memorization, regurgitation, more so than the how to learn problem solving aspects.
And there's a new way of learning
Absolutely.
today based on this instrument
Yes.
that we have here, right?
100%. I was going to actually double back to Mr. Ramming's point, right? So it goes back to the key word of exposure. I think Bahamians are exposed.
They're exposed to technology.
To technology, and they're exposed to other concepts via technology. So back in the day, I mean, I would have a videotape of something if I wanted to do that. Now I just go to YouTube. And YouTube is and the running joke is, I think they'll appreciate, there's the YouTube University.
Yes.
Where some people who only go to YouTube to learn everything. And guess what?
That's how I learned how to do my plumbing.
See, there you go. And so, perfect example. He learned how, he had a problem, he had a pain point before, and we all know plumbing can be a real issue in any house. So he had a pain point, he decided to fix it. He had the initiative to go onto YouTube University, he learned how to do it, he fixed it, that one's over.
Let's take this to the next level. There isn't anything that happens that I don't know about that I don't look at it on YouTube. That's the first step.
Yeah.
What did 10 other people who are experts in the area do with that particular problem? I have the answer.
One of the things that are very popular to learn online as well as languages. I think I would encourage many more Bahamians to do that. I can tell you that's what actually propelled my career. The fact that I was fluent in Spanish, learned Portuguese. That was really the main thing that offered me the opportunity to gain the exposure that I got.
And let's bridge into
Right.
that concept now, right? So he learned that as a skill in his years coming up. Without even knowing, I'm sure there's an app for that right now and then. Back then, he might have started an
course.
online course. He might have gone to his computer. Now he probably loads up an app if he wanted to, and is on his way to work.
And talking about us we take a lot of things for granted,
Yes.
right? So we have a lot of things going for us, right? The proximity to the U.S., all of these things. But one very obvious thing, we speak English. English is the world's, the global language of the business language of the world, okay? And if we take the effort to now learn some additional languages, we expand our horizons. But guess what? For anyone in the entire world who doesn't speak English as their first native language, if they wanted to do that, they have to learn English. We can actually reach almost the entire world because a lot of them are forced to learn English to do international business, right? Just because we speak English, right? So we have to use a lot of these things to our advantages and find how can we now expand our global footprint.
Which, yeah, there are people that are doing business here that don't have any Bahamian clients.
Correct.
They're just over the internet, either through podcasts or if they make music. The famous, this was back even before the internet, a lot of Bahamian artists used to make more money touring in Europe than they did in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean. So there's a lot of opportunity for digital kind of over the phone, over a computer kind of businesses that can
Absolutely.
be done.
And now even add to that, to tie it all in with technology, where I would have not been available to, say, speak with someone in a different language, because of Google Translate, every document that comes through can be translated, so we're corresponding instantaneously.
Just don't translate your contracts.
Exactly. Well, that has legal implications. And that's why you can't, and that's a good point too. As much as technology brings in convenience, you still can't abandon protocol or professionalism. You have to use the technology to raise the bar with everything else.
Correct.
You marry your technology with your learning.
Correct.
Let me ask you, gentlemen. We talked about the ease of doing business, and we've heard a whole lot of people talking about it.
Yes.
How easy is it to do business in the Bahamas?
It could be improved.
It can be
It can-
easier,
yeah.
right?
The ease of doing business really has to do with the time for things to happen, more so than the regulations. It's just
Correct.
you should be able to, like how someone in the United States, they can get all of their tax forms, their bank account, their licenses within a month, unless they're doing something really complicated or really cutting edge, like say flying taxis or something. But besides that, if you've done something that someone else has done before, it should be relatively quick for you to get started, because time is money, and one of the reasons a lot of these businesses are failing is just because they run out of money.
That's right.
You remember in the last segment we talked about regulations, and some people were happy that we have these regulations. But some of these regulations, they stand in the way of the ease to do business very easily.
Let's speak to it directly. Incorporating a new company.
Yes.
That should take 10 minutes. However, it is a manual process. You're required to go through a certain type of entity before you can submit your documents. Documents are typically written, they have to be stamped, they have to be sent back. Whereas if they were to incorporate technology, that should be something you sit at a computer, you type, you hit an enter button, you get a confirmation, it's updated, it's filed, and you get your certificate back. So it's the bureaucracy part of it. The regulation says you are required to have a business license. That's not a bad thing.
No.
The bureaucracy says you've got to jump through these 10 hoops to get it. And that is the difference. The other thing, property sales. Your property sales, if we had registered or put property into a proper registry, you should be able to sell property instantaneously without having to go through all sorts of rigmarole and costs to make it happen. So one of the things that we talk about in terms of being ready, and the young millennials and people in this world, we ask the question, why is it taking so long?
Yeah, but
This should be something you just do.
Yeah, but
Get it done.
Mr. Davies, it takes a very long time to open a bank account.
Well, it should not.
Yes.
Well, guess what?
So how do you
So let me
get around
let
that?
me solve the problem for you.
Canoe.
Canoe solves that problem. No, it takes you 5 minutes to open an account with us, and you can hold $500 on your phone. If you took 2 more minutes, you could hold $15,000 on your phone, and you don't have one bank account.
Yes, but here it is, you have young people, and not so young people, who want to open a business, who want to start a business.
Yes.
They're talking thousands of dollars, and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars.
Sometimes hundreds of thousands.
Yes, yes. But they want to open a bank account. And we've heard of people who had to go into Florida to open a bank account to do business in the Bahamas.
Correct.
Isn't that a problem?
Yeah, it's a
Well,
big
so,
problem.
okay, so there are a couple things you're addressing in there, right? So let me kind of peel back some of the layers so we could view the problem in the proper context. So the core issue is, with most traditional institutions, they have traditional methods of doing business. As digital revolution or digitalization of different things occurred, new ways of doing new ways of doing business started to not be compatible with old ways of doing business. For example, I cannot conduct an effective search online if the data is not put into a database. So if that room is full of records and that's not been compatible, and then that's where people suffer under the process. So you have this element of transitioning from a traditional approach, which hinders the inefficiency, and then changing the tradition also includes a new mindset of options that are kind of available, because of I don't need a bank's loan per se. I can go to a crowdfunding source locally, thankfully through him, and GoFundMe if I was in the States or however. The dynamics have changed, and hence why I'm saying if the market was in the middle, it's now stepping closer towards the customer than it was to the service provider. And so the service provider now has to step closer to the market to meet it.
And your statement was exactly what people traditionally thought. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
There's no need to open a bank account just to do business in the way that you're thinking.
Right.
Or, again, what are you, your
Yeah, but I want to buy land. I want to be.
Okay.
I'm spending big money. I don't need $1,500.
No, but see-
we're talking about, as
No.
he said, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of
There's
thousands.
another level that you can get, that you qualify with, that is unlimited. So again, I'm not constrained by the traditional methods. So there's level 1, there's level 2, there's level 3.
I think that one of the overall trends we're looking at here is automation, right? If you have 10 logical steps in a process, do you need 10 people to carry out each of those steps? I mean, you can have technology actually self-execute along that chain, along that value chain. And what it does, it adds value to the consumer, right? It reduces costs, reduces friction, removes frustration.
And
but
typically-
let's get to the nitty gritty
Go
of
ahead.
this.
Right.
You're talking about your customer rule that we have in operation in our
Right.
country,
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Due
Okay.
diligence.
But what does that mean?
And,
What does that mean?
and
though?
it is creating a whole lot of problems for people in business in the country. You have difficulties cashing checks.
That's right.
You have difficulties in this country negotiating or cashing a manager's check.
Correct.
You know, you have these issues in
All
other
right?
countries
So
too.
We're
though.
talking
Yes.
about how do we make it easier for people to do business. And shouldn't we, since we're talking about vision casting,
Yes.
shouldn't we fix these little problems?
100%. So, and I'll answer your question, but
The answer is yes, right?
I'll reverse engineer it. So, if you go to any business, you would like the option, you're not going to always have cash on you. Correct? You might want to have the option to use a credit card or a debit card. And there are a number of well-established restaurants in the Bahamas that don't accommodate.
Yes, but Mr. Brathwaite,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not talking about giving me cold cash. I'm talking about the use, the availability of funds on a manager's check so that I can use those funds in my account.
I wanted to give you insight to how broken the system is, even at the retail level. So,
Oh, I see you agreeing.
yeah, well, exactly. And
Yes.
how we're using technology to empower it. So if I can't swipe a debit card at a restaurant that's doing really well, and there are a lot of restaurants in the Bahamas who fall into that category. I know
Yeah.
we're thinking of a 3 right now.
Don't
right?
accept credit cards.
They don't accept credit cards.
Yes.
First class menu, don't accept credit cards. And why? Because they can't get, again, from their feedback to us, difficulty with the bank. This is a business that wants it. So there are, again, because of regulatory environments, different change in models, different global connections, the due diligence or bureaucracy is bogging down the ability of a lot of people to do things. And technology is alleviating
Yes.
that bureaucracy.
So let's jump off into that issue. You talked about the manager's check being a problem. The person receiving the check or the entity receiving the check doesn't want to take the risk that that piece of paper is illegitimate.
Correct.
And so you say it's a manager's check, this is legitimate. Well, they're saying, you know what, I'm not too sure of that. Technology removes that barrier. Technology has several layers of authentication that are who you are, meaning your fingerprint, your iris print, which are unique to you, what you know, a code that only you can enter, or some other authentication in the chip where like for PCI compliance, payment card industry compliance, where it authenticates the transaction. So technology will remove the need for that manager's check
And-
by allowing me to move funds instantaneously by virtue of an authentication that I myself initiate.
And we're talking about regulated technology. So that means that, you know, if it goes bump in the night, you have recourse.
Yes.
So that's the difference between what we're doing and what some of the other things are. This exists under the laws of the Bahamas. So it's not like if heaven forbid your app stops working, you can call these gentlemen and they'll solve it. They'll solve the problem. That's just
Well, actually,
Exactly.
it's self-healing.
Exactly.
It fixes itself, and it tells us what it did.
Right.
So we're on top of that.
Are we on the right course as a country in dealing with all of these challenges in the global economy?
We having the right conversation.
We're having the right conversation.
And
And
people
that
are-
will take us
that's
on the
right.
right course.
And people are doing the work.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean,
And people are
I would
doing
say because some of the technology we just highlighted, some of them are very old technology, and we're still in catch-up mode. But we're having a conversation about futuristic stuff as well, and our finger is right on the pulse of what's happening now.
You have the right people in the room. Allow them to execute.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, gentlemen. We thank you so very much for being here today talking about vision casting. And we are going to continue these discussions here on JCN Television and Radio Love 97. And if you want to learn more about the global economy and how the Bahamas is fitting in the overall scheme of things, stay tuned. Thank you so very much for watching and listening. Good evening, everyone.